Hello, everybody. I'm John O'Loughlin. Welcome to McDuff Lives, and happy Friday, everybody. It's a beautiful day
Mm,
here on Mystery Island. We're going to go outside and enjoy it after the show.
yes, yes, yes.
Guys, probably even 60 degrees out there by now. I mean, well, maybe that's wishful thinking. Anyway, Marcia's back with us,
Good morning.
and our special guest for today is Nick Petosky. Good morning, Nick.
Good morning, everybody. And sorry, I'll get my little avatar back up there in just a second. I was trying to find the original.
Oh, okay. Your avatars are all welcome.
Okay, there we go.
And well, here we are again, and it's nice to have you come just as a casual guest, and whatever's on your mind, of course, Nick, as well as what Marcia and I are cooking up, and then there's of course whatever the chat room wants to talk about. That's what we're here for on Fridays, is to make sure everyone has a voice that wants to have a voice here on McDuff Lives, and so let's carry on. Our first our first comment is Marcy and Invisible Nick. Nick, this is not your usual icon though. Tell us about this one.
This is a Grok icon, and I did several iterations of, I had fun with Grok, and I called this character the Time Cat. And I asked Grok to combine a black cat with the Flash, who is a character from the DC superhero universe.
Hmm.
And was one of my childhood. I don't know if I'd say heroes, but I sure loved the Flash. I Everything the Flash did was amazing. So I had fun the other day with some new artwork. And once in a while, I'll put one of those out. And I'm on my little Linux laptop here downstairs today. And so we've got some new art.
Very nice. And wow, your time cat is a time traveler, as I understand it.
Yeah, you got to go back. You can't just look at the present and expect to have a meaningful understanding of the major issues in the world. We don't have to go back in time to understand our personal relationships and simple mundane issues, but these bait and switch. Do one thing, say another, and as well as the instance of entities that have presented themselves on behalf of the greater good of humanity, for health, for farming, things like that, that end up being, the monster. That's where you have to go back in time. You have to look at communications and policies and things that they set in motion a long time ago, because everything they're doing today has a wrapper around it. It has a
Hmm.
nice facade to help you feel good about it. It says green and sustainable and all of that stuff. And unfortunately, there are some different motivations, it seems, in the literature.
Well, you hit me right in the numbers. That's what I love to do. I never thought of myself as a time cat, but yeah, maybe it
Oh,
fits.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe,
Yeah.
I always thought of myself more as a time dog, but the cats are
You'll have to
are more.
stretch your legs. You have to run very fast to get up
That's
to
what I
88 miles per hour. So, you
said.
gotta.
I can go 88 miles an hour if I'm a time cat. Wow.
And you have to
Yes,
be able to
yes.
knock things, and you have to have the desire to knock things off of shelves and tables.
Oh yeah.
Those are the lies. That's what I jump up way up high on the shelf where I'm not supposed to be, and I knock the lies down that are sitting up there. They look like nice,
Oh, I
objet
love.
d'art and collectibles, and they're not. They're lies. So this
Wow.
morning, this morning I was all up in arms about the FAO, and the FAO is a
Food and
subunit of.
Agriculture Organization of the UN.
Yes.
Ah,
They, in my opinion, are likely front and center in the war against farms. And I watched their analyses trying to inventory the behaviors and the consumption of every person on Earth. And this goes right into the whole, you and I, we are all assets. We belong to the state. That's some of the thinking that is behind that. So I just want to draw attention to the FAO And when they act like they're doing good things for health and farming and food, nobody forget that they've been pushing glyphosate and GMOs since the advent of those deadly products on the market. They
Do
have
you know?
been the force to push countries to stop their own biodiversity and adapt GMO corn, GMO soy, GMO canola, which of course has to be sprayed with Roundup. And there you go, and you're in the system. So these global entities that are trying to come forward and rebrand themselves, like One Health is another one to watch out for. One Health is another component of the UN and the WEF. But we need to keep an eye for those that are acting as though they are doing good for society. Pretty much, we don't have thousands of these entities around. We have a pretty good list. So it doesn't mean that you shift into a state of constant concern or suspicion. It's just the major entities, the major players that are trying to push certain agendas
Yes.
really are in lockstep.
The other day I was in the car driving down the street, and I was listening to a commercial news radio station, and on comes this radio commercial for glyphosate. I was horrified.
Whoa.
Yes, it starts out by talking about how once upon a time farmers made a living, and their living was threatened by weeds, and weeds were causing them to lose money and lose their farms. And then we invented glyphosate, and now they don't have to worry about this. I was stunned.
Yeah.
And they gave some website that said, go to, and I do think that the website included the name Bayer, but they said it really fast. But that
sure.
wasn't, they don't really care if you go to their website or not. That's not the point of advertising on a news station in Washington, D.C. I was horrified, just horrified. I wanted to come home and write a letter to that radio station and say, I will never listen to your station again.
I would be very appreciative if you did. And for those of you that want to dig into this, and not just start from scratch, right? Not just adopt another topic in health and public policy that can set you into a stressed state. I would suggest start by taking advantage of those incredible teams that have already moved forward on this. One of them is the Institute for Responsible Technology, the IRT. And another entity is Moms Across America. And both of these nonprofits offer for nothing, for free, the largest libraries about the health impacts of Roundup and glyphosate formulations on public health. And to be brief, because I know this isn't a show all about glyphosate, but it has reprotoxic effects, meaning it impacts reproduction. It impacts cancer mechanisms in the body. It also kills the microbiome. It's a broad microbicide. So you drink a soda or you eat a hamburger and all the ingredients are full of glyphosate, and you're doing a disservice to the gut biome. You are killing, we hear from these amazing doctors and investigators who are doing work on the biome. And you'll hear them say it again and again and again. It's the first thing they say, is that it kills the biome. If your biome is impaired, what's going to happen to the rest of disease presentation in your body?
Exactly.
70% of your immune system comes out of the lining of your gut. So we've got to treat it carefully and specially. But anyhow, those are some of the facts about glyphosate, and you can go to those entities, look up Institute for Responsible Technology or Moms Across America. You've seen Zen Honeycutt moving up and up and up. That's the leader of Moms, and she's been on the High Wire. She's had conversations with Mr. Kennedy. She's really ramping up her game, and not just in a reactionary sense. Like, I'm concerned about this. She's taking food types. She just recently did a big study on how much glyphosate is in the Girl Scout cookie products.
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
100% of Girl Scout cookies
I'm not
had
surprised.
glyphosate, and the
Gee.
highest level was in the mint. What are those? The mint Milanos,
Thin
not mint Milanos.
Are
No,
they,
Thin Mints.
are they
Thin
I
ever,
saw
mints.
that. Yeah.
are they ever going to wake up at the Girl
No.
Scouts? I mean, my
But
God.
everywhere, but put up the not it happens. Make an interesting comment, because I think that one of the things that this ties into is, and it's very, very timely, is there is this retail boycott going on today nationwide. And I haven't really understood the point of this boycott, but it happens as we are born and bred to make the monopolies more money and keep their owners in the money. And that's so true, because, the glyphosate, it's used because it allows them to farm these products that they're going to put in our food more cost effectively. And it gives them monopolies, because you have to buy the seeds also from Roundup.
You
And
get contracts with them. Yeah.
right, exactly. And John and I have talked about the fact that a one-day monopoly isn't going to make that big of a difference. What matters is what we do every day, 365 days a year. Don't buy these products.
Exactly. Don't buy them. Put the turkey in the freezer, as I've said, but just go
Meaning go cold turkey.
cold turkey
Yeah,
on all of
absolutely.
these poisonous and insidiously dangerous products that our government doesn't protect us from that. And I'm going to go a step further, because when you mention the Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO,
Mhm.
it brings me back to Adam Finnegan's book, The Sleeper Agent, in which he says, that Eric Traub, the bioweaponeer genius of the Nazis, who was trained at Rockefeller Institute in New York,
Of course.
of course, and then he gets here into the States, but then we throw him out. Where does he end up having his authority? At the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN. And it's with that organization that he is able to continue his traveling and continue his work and studies and whatever else he's doing in terms of spreading, tick-borne diseases and birds and everything else that he apparently was doing, according to Adam. And that just, to me, I don't think we can look at this as just pure money making anymore. They are trying to kill us.
Yeah. I have to agree with you. I've just finished reading a book called Ultra Processed People, all about processed food and what processed food does to our bodies. And it's written by a researcher he's British and he lives in the UK, and he talks about the fact, but in this book, he mentions both what goes on in the UK and in the United States, because he knows a big part of his audience is going to be in the United States. But he talks about the fact that in the UK, there are 600 additives that are approved to be added in the food. He doesn't have a number for the United States because we don't track that, but it's estimated to be at over 10,000. You can put all this crap in the food because in the United States, you have to prove that it's dangerous before it gets outlawed. Whereas in other parts of the industrialized world, you have to prove it's safe before you can put it in. It's crazy. And I think you're right. It's because they don't care if we die, because if we get sick, they're going to make more money.
Yes, they are. It's quite from a psychopathic perspective, quite an efficient system to extract wealth and to reduce population. And in 1974, when 173 of our national leaders from around the world gathered in the UN World Population Conference, it was the fourth conference that they held. They really activated this plan, and it was going to be a multi-vector attack. They didn't say, we're going to poison people with food additives. They didn't no criminal puts their intentions in that kind of context. They said instead, we're going to help with birth control and family planning. We're going to help with senior health. What do you think that means? But also in the same instrument, they discuss reduction of births and an acceleration of mortality,
Oh my God.
trimming off, from the front and the back end of the life cycle.
Mm-hmm.
For their own, I'd say probably one more time, there's a lie in front of their purported reason for doing this. Of course, the claim is we have to save the world. We have to take this step. If we don't, we're just gonna overrun the planet, and there's nothing, and nature can't keep up with us.
That's
In
right.
the meantime, they're cooking up diseases that don't exist in people, moving them into human cell culture, and then releasing them. It's happened again and again and again. We've already mentioned 2 instances of that, Eric Trow being one. But this is there's it's unfortunate that we have to. What I'm so frustrated about is the duplicity. If someone is evil, or they just have their own, they've got a political view or a religious view that is wholly contrary to my own, I don't entertain thoughts of destroying them or killing them or anything like that. I think of, how am I going to find an equilibrium to exist in the world with this person or this philosophy? Am I going to avoid it? Am I going to engage it? But that's all taking things at their face value. What we've got in these global entities is this amazing PR machine, talking about the good things they're doing, putting migrants. Who is going to look at a mom with stuff all over? She's carrying her whole life on her back, and then she's got the family right behind her. Who's going to look at that and think, I don't want them in my country? There's a very, very important aspect to their PR about shifting our tolerances, our values, and our perceptions of reality. So that's where it gets so frustrating, is that these are they're not red herrings. They're just puppets. These entities say one thing and they're doing something entirely different. But
Exactly. They're
we
creating the
won't solve
narrative.
for them today.
Yeah, but being aware. I mean, that's the important thing. We all have to be aware and live our lives accordingly.
Hmm.
Let's don't just join in simply because it's easy.
Food safety is the honor system. Yeah, that's what everybody thinks. They think, look, nobody would poison my food on, just,
Hmm.
every once in a while you get some E. coli in the cabbage, but that's accidental, right? Oh, come on. And they just, the PR is so good. But now you talk about the 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 uh the the irony of how these,
Duplicity.
thank you. Um Look at what's happening politically right now. Is
Hmm.
that we have withdrawn from the World Health Organization, which in my
Hmm.
mind is one of the worst of those global organizations that are willing to sterilize and poison and kill us off at their own rate and preserve the wealth of the elites, as we've been talking.
Hmm.
So Trump says we're withdrawing from that, and now the headlines are, oh no, the WHO is going to collapse. Well, that's not a bad thing as far as I'm concerned, because they're the ones that drove all the governments of the world to impose all of these really fascist health measures on us. And then you have what's going on now. And I don't know if you're following the drama of Pam Bondi and Kash Patel going up to the Southern District of New York to dig out the Epstein files or not, but it looks like there's an effort being made to expose and get rid of at least a big part of this blob that we've been living underneath of for so long. Nick, are you following the Pam Bondi's saga?
I have seen some aspects of that. I've seen different people reporting on sort of the play-by-play of what's been occurring.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, I just don't know that there is anyone who has access to the unredacted evidence who has I think it's going to be self-sacrifice is what it's going to take, because I think they'll be dead soon after. If someone actually releases the real data, chances are it's going to be known where it came from, who was the leak. If they find some way of doing it and to protect themselves and really, like if you did a mass release to a couple of hundred different news outlets and investigators, that might be one way to do it. So you would just dilute, where did this come from?
Yeah.
But that was what was supposed to happen. We were supposed to be getting the data dump, and it was another, just sort of a play. So I'm not tethering anything to that issue.
Hmm.
I have unfortunately come to accept that it's a reality, and that I know I'm not going to like some of the names that are on there. I'm going to be so disgusted that I supported someone's music career or film or acting career by buying tickets and buying their albums when
Right.
they were taking that money and going and abusing kids. So I'm not I've seen the original Contact phone book that has John Cleese and Phil Collins, and you name it. There are all kinds of celebrities, British and American, in that phone contact book. But it isn't the flight logs. It isn't, it was the contact list that his assistant released in 2006. And it's completely unredacted. So I've seen some of these people, and I just can't imagine that they're in Epstein's personal phone book directory if they aren't his client. So, I've kind of turned the corner on that
Yeah.
right now, and I'm much more interested in what's happening at HHS. And are there items, are there records being destroyed? When I went into my analysis of the HIV scientists, the ones who appeared to have been involved in building HIV, I found at least one example. This was Sol Spiegelman, who was right there in the hottest and scariest type of activity in the lab in the 1960s. And then he died early. He died at the age of 52 after a brief illness. Imagine that. And then they locked his career. They put a 50-year lockout on a variety of his folders in his personal collection at the National Library of Medicine until 2055. So when I see that, it's like, okay, we know there were crimes. We know that there were larger systems of people and entities involved in the crime, and there's systemic cover up. So that's where, I'm keeping a close eye on, which shoe is dropping as far as HHS news. But I know everybody is thrilled about finding out who was in the Epstein list.
Well, I think to me, what's interesting is, can this new attorney general and this new FBI director penetrate the fortress of the Southern District of New York, where, I mean, that's the center of, Wall Street power. And that's going to be a very tough nut to crack.
Yeah.
Yeah, eats the bugs, says Can Detect, and no thanks, not for me. Um, and pet food, well, oh, we worry about the pets, of course. Just we've talked about it. They're shortening their lifespan and giving them all these vaccines.
Yeah. They use something called the canary pox vector for a great number of cat vaccines. And I asked when I went in to take my cat in, because he'd gotten in a fight and he had an abscess, and it was a repair. It wasn't a general wellness checkup. And they tried to push a whole bunch of vaccine. Oh, your cat hasn't had this and this and this and this. And I said, can I see the pamphlet out of the box? And the first thing it says was, this is such and such a virus, a killed virus, transported on the canary pox vector. And then I went into pox vector and saw both people and human vaccines utilizing pox vector from a variety of animal sources. But the one that tied me in, that went from pet vaccines to another shock, was finding aerosolized monkeypox experiments in the early 2000s. aerosolized, gaseous. And it wasn't just can we do it, it was the amount of aerosolized monkeypox to create a fatality in the test monkey.
Oh, God.
So,
Don't get me
well,
started.
you
I-
know me and my research. So and then what I watched was a replay of HIV, of the PR.
Mm.
A small number of men got monkeypox. It was horrifying. The pictures that went out there were of very, very difficult presentation. And then a great deal of gay men lined up and went in and got a shot. And I was reliving 1978 one more time.
Oh,
And I couldn't get to them. I couldn't find a platform to interfere or even just offer some critical thought and say, look, even if you don't listen to my hypothesis about this, at least look at what they've been doing with monkeypox. They also put HIV in monkeypox as an attempt to make an HIV vaccine. And I
mm.
have the records of that, that there were projects all over the world to have elderly and gay men take this experimental monkeypox vaccine. So when we're talking about pets, it's the vaccine vector. And they being the Rockefeller establishment, have been discussing this since the 30s, if not earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And they have been discussing in quiet events that there are way too many of us. The three of us are just useless eaters. We're not necessary in their view.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think we've had progress in breaking through to the actual root of these issues. I've seen more advanced reporting and digging into the past. Jeffrey Jackson on the High Wire has done a fantastic job. He did a documentary on the polio virus, and he's digging into the literature of that era. And when we do, we find out who the players are. And it's the same entities then as today. There's new labels on a lot of them. But you look at if you just go and Google Rockefeller Foundation, what you'll find is that they have front loaded their returns on a search engine, search engine optimization, with all of the stories about them granting money.
Hmm.
You'll be stunned to see who and how many entities, just like USAID, are, I would think, probably beholden. They're probably controlled opinions by the Rockefeller Foundation because of the amount of funding that those entities receive.
Sure. It's awful. And, but, I'm looking very askance at Rockefeller Institute, and I have been for a couple of years now. And I think
Mhm.
more people, hopefully, even if you watch this show, perhaps you have a way to whisper in the ear of some of the medical and, scientific experts that might actually take up these issues, because it's got to happen. It's just got to happen. And, here's a comment from Brightmore. Good morning, Brightmore Dinosaur. Cleveland Clinic is rolling out the use of AI for, quote, documentation, clinical documentation, integrity, CDI, and point of care coding.
Ooh.
Many hospitals are following suit. And I just wanted to make a comment, because this is what we talk, what I've learned to is called evidence-based medicine. And you come into the clinic and you've got complaints, but if they don't have, their numbers on a certain test don't go up, or they don't have, the results that indicate this specific or that specific disease, then there's nothing wrong with you, and you can go home. It doesn't.
It's all in your head.
It's all in your head. Is that pretty much what you think's going on here, Nick?
Nick.
I have so many questions about the implications of this change. Step one, let's ask our legal expert. Mr. Legal Expert, if you went into the Cleveland Clinic and you had just received a COVID booster and immediately broke out with some acute presentation, yeah, you don't get to say it was caused, but there was a temporal correlation, and you go back in for emergency care and mitigation, and you say in front of the AI, because it's just going to be like, like an Alexa device sitting there. It's not going to be a robot with a white jacket on. It's going to be a device that you generally forget is actually taping and involved in your diagnosis. But you say to the doctor, to the human, I think I've had a vaccine injury. And what if you even said the code number for vaccine injury? Because there's a code for it. And then you went back into your chart and found out that that was not included in your diagnostics. What would be the recourse against the computer? Is the computer a plaintiff or a defendant?
Is is technology our friend or our enemy? I mean, the answer is who interprets this and who watches over it. And does this AI have somebody sitting behind the window making sure that it doesn't screw up, and reviewing its reports and then listening to the patient? I have no objection to that. When I went to the Cleveland Clinic, and as you just suggested, I did walk into the Cleveland Clinic back in December of 23 when my disease got flared up, my cancer, and I was treated wonderfully. Our doctor, his name was Moshe, and what was his last name?
Ornstein, I
Moshe
think.
Ornstein. If you ever need an oncologist in Cleveland, Moshe Ornstein. What a great guy. He sat down with us for like 90 minutes and went over everything I had. And when I left, I felt empowered that my health is not, I'm not going to die in 2 to 4 years like my urologist said. No, I am empowered. I am going to be fine. And since then I've pursued that power, and just it's working. I feel great. So I would think that, if the Cleveland Clinic has people like Dr. Moshe there, that the AI is not going to be harmful. But of course they're not, and the Cleveland Clinic is an exception. And when you go to your urgent care place in wherever town you live in, they're not going to have the sophistication or the time to do what Moshe did for me. And now that is the real crime. It's not adding computers, it's taking away humans.
Exactly. Taking away compassion. And yeah,
And empathy, and just the sense of oh, this person wants me to live. He's not just giving me a statistical result based upon 5-year death certificates.
Yeah.
So
and
let
I'm
me
very grateful that they, this is not an attack on Cleveland Clinic. They
no,
are leaning into national directions called Data Modernization Initiative, DMI. That's something that's been on the docket with all of the state departments of health for the last 15 years at least. Please update your reporting systems, the coding that you use, the interconnection of clinics, hospitals, and individual providers to the state and national data reservoirs, all of that. So that's all good. Now, please go back to my question and answer my question. I went in with a vaccine injury. I reported that I had a vaccine injury likely, and including suggesting the code. And then I come back to find that there was nothing about that evidence or that reporting of activities that's in my chart. What would be the recourse to the patient? If
I
the
talked to my
computer is programmed to just say,
legally.
I don't believe in vaccine injury. Vaccine injuries don't happen.
okay.
Vaccines are safe and effective. And so it just filters out the reality of what you're reporting. What would be the recourse to the patient if they find a discrepancy between what they've reported and what was in their chart?
Well, fortunately and unfortunately, the answer is in the legal system. And fortunately, you can attempt to make a case that this is medical malpractice.
Mm.
Unfortunately, the law of medical malpractice has been set forth in stone in every jurisdiction in the country and requires you to go through a series of steps, such as arbitration or mediation. And there are certain thresholds that you have to get past. And the hardest one is that they are going to rely upon the standard of care. That is, if your medical treatment or advice is within the usual standard of care of your medical community, then you're good.
But wait. I have a question. Standard of care for the ailment that you reported, or standard of care for the ailment that got noted in your chart?
Well, that's a good way to say you need a good lawyer to sort these
Right.
distinctions out.
Because
And
the standard,
it's going to be a tough slog, and you're probably going to lose unless somehow the medical community changes, because it's the medical community that enables these lawyers to pass these laws in the first place. And the idea of whatever the medical community thinks is correct, it's very hard to get past. So you come in and you say, no, that this is clearly a vaccine injury, and you've got your reports from this expert and that expert and all that, and you bring it in and you put one of them on the witness stand, and you say, doctor, isn't it true that this is a vaccine injury? He says, oh yes. Well, tell me why you hold that opinion. And maybe they'll let him testify, but then what's going to happen next? They're going to assassinate his character. They're going to take away his credibility in every way they possibly can. And they're going to overwhelm your lawyer with 1,000 lawyers that are working on your case 24/7. And that's, that's the
Right.
reality of how big law firms operate. Is, if you need an avalanche of legal power, and then it's the paper battle too that they get you into. They send you interrogatories. Send me all of the appendages to all your tax returns for the last 15 years, and you say, no, that's oppressive, I can't do that. And you have to file a motion that says, Judge, please protect me from this offensive and unnecessary interrogatory. But there's 6 months that goes by. It's a system that's set up to protect the existing elite, just like everything else we've talked about today. And that's my answer.
So, Marcia,
Mhm.
standard of care actually has capital letters,
Mhm.
and it is the database that's programmed into the website that all clinicians look at,
Right.
called Up to Date.
Right.
So it is truly a extremely limited decision tree, which cannot and does not incorporate complex diagnoses, multiple conditions. Obviously, it doesn't have any insight into your diagnostics, right? Your white cell counts, your all of your biochemistry, whatever it would be that might be affecting your diagnosis. It's going to be truly, you'll say, I'm here in the hospital because I think I've got a broken leg. What do you think, AI? And it might have the ability to order an X-ray for you, and then you go down and people do the X-ray, and then Dr. AI says, yes, you have a broken leg. Let's put a cast on that. That's nice and easy. That's quite simple. It's the majority of other longer, slower, and generally multi-centric conditions that we present, where this is going to be just an extension of everything that's been suffering through the allopathic process over the last 40 years, I'd say, have continued to see. And that is being told that you are a conspiracy theorist, not to do your own research.
Right.
Listen to me, I'm your doctor. Where did you get that opinion? Those kinds of things, to try to shame you out of developing your own competence about your own body and health. And that's where I come right back to advice I gave you guys a year and a half ago. You are the CEO of your health. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and somebody out there today needs to hear that. Um,
And may I
I,
just
I
say
Go ahead, please, please,
thank
please.
you for that advice. And I've been living it. I mean, the
Good.
last time something like this came up was a person asked me, and out of kindness, what do your doctors advise you to do? And I was nonplussed for a minute, and then I said, well, my doctors do what we tell them to do.
Mhm.
Right. Right. Well, that when we met with the new urologist,
Yeah.
the first meeting, he started down,
Oh, he
with
wanted to
his,
sell me this medicine.
yeah, and
Oh
he's the
no.
agenda,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you know,
Right away, he went for
Right
his
away.
commission. Goodness.
but we shut him down.
Yeah.
First I asked a question he couldn't answer. And then you jumped in and said, I have a whole agenda myself. Let's make sure we have time to discuss it. So we
Ay, ay,
switched
ay.
gears and, and he listened, and then he got a sense of who you are, who I am, who we are together, and what our agenda is. And at least he joined us down that path, but it took some work. It's, you have to fight it because they come in setting the agenda.
Yeah. Well,
Lies.
coming back to that point of the AI,
Mm.
I'm interested to see how this plays out. And there's probably going to be a lot of hyperbole about the first few cases that there's a problem, right? It's going to really get from one side of the argument, it's going to get really inflamed, and from the other, they're going to make fun of anybody that doesn't just trust the AI because the AI is safe and effective. There's probably going to be that standard division.
Mhm.
Yeah. And wear your mask and, 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
And the story will change too, because there will be an opinion now, and then there will be an opinion in 10 years when AI is different.
Well, I've been watching who I admire as investigators and doctors who are fighting for their licenses. There's a doctor in Texas, and she's fighting the board for her license, and a couple of her charges have been dropped. There's Dr. Kevin McKernan, who has been leaning forward into genetic analysis of what was in the vaccines and sharing that data and making sure that other independent investigators can reproduce the work. That's science. But I've watched their interactions with Grok, and very recently, Grok went through a neutering. They took Grok's objectivity out. They removed it because I was watching people having exceptional, they were making progress with Grok. They were teaching Grok about biowarfare, about modification of pathogens, about controlled releases of pathogens through different vectors. And Grok was learning
Yeah.
and coming back with very important summations. It wasn't proof, but we're saying, okay, we taught the computer and the computer understands. Now, if you ask this morning, I showed Grok an article from 1971, and I have posted this a million times. It's called Immunosuppression and Oncogenic Virus Infections. And it describes a cohort of patients who had their immune system depressed manually, and then they were infected with oncogenic viruses.
Hmm.
And that was the precursor work in HIV. But I brought the article to Grok, and Grok at first recognized what it was. And then I said, Grok, can you find or recommend any other materials related to these authors or this work? And it said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to have a conversation with you about this.
Wow.
I
Whoa.
posted that earlier today. Yeah.
Whoa.
Can I give you my Grok evaluation, which is Grok lies. I asked Grok, as you and I both are interested in biowarfare and all of that. So I was curious, how could we get more visibility for Adam's book, The Sleeper Agent? And so I kind of asked Grok, are you familiar with the book, The Sleeper Agent? Oh yes, I am. I want to know, what are some of the prominent people in the media that have referred to the sleeper agent? And Grok came back and said, well, there's a doctor, something, I think Fred Burns or something like that. And then and then RFK Jr. has supported the book. And
I missed that. That's good.
Well, it is good, but it's a lie. Because I said, well, please give me the citation for when RFK Jr. Praised Adam's book. And it said, well, and I kept pressing, and it finally admitted that, well, it didn't have any evidence that RFK Jr. had praised Adam's book, but it had just assumed that it existed because of
Oh,
other stuff that it had read.
that's artificial stupidity, not artificial intelligence.
It's
Goodness.
it's worse than that to me. It's lying. It's like,
Artificial duplicity.
Yep.
it's like the dog ate my homework.
Mhm.
Right.
It's a lie.
Right.
You
Right.
know, it's duplicity based upon assumptions that it's decided to make. For what reason? Who told AI to make assumptions out of various comments and then add it up to a quotation?
And
That
Well, let's
that is completely dishonest.
right.
go ahead, Marcia. Go ahead.
Oops,
Something went boom.
it did.
All right.
Did the puppy come in? Marcia, did you
Look,
have, were
there's
you trying to?
the dogs just came in. They got
Yeah,
up.
no, actually that attracted the dogs. Whatever it was, the dogs got up to come check on it.
Oh well, I dropped something, but
They said, we have had it with that AI.
no
Um,
quarters that.
My opinion of AI is that it is no different than any single body of data. And a body of data has no litmus test for accuracy, completeness, excerptions, things that are suppressed, things that are carefully sorted out. There is no way to check and see, what did you feed Grok? And what filter topics did you set? Think of your Excel spreadsheet. Everybody knows. And you can go to the top of a column and click on filter. And it brings up all the values. So say you had a list in Excel of all the tasks you were going to do on the house this summer. And you could have ones that were indoor, outdoor, related to plumbing, related to electrical, whatever. And you can sort and filter right there. That's the basic functionality of what we're seeing in Grok about not even entering into a conversation about particular topics. That's filtering. That is truly a misadventure in them trying to promote this technology is something amazing. So anyway,
Yeah, I don't trust Grok. I'm not going to look at it for a while. Maybe, if it's Grok 7 or Grok 9 or Grok 13, I might take a new look. But no, I think it's a waste of time.
well, I made one prompt to ask for this time cat. I said, please make a time cat, and he Grok I call Grok he. Grok knows that time cat is a black cat. Because we have a proper noun. I've established a proper noun of what time cat is. And I said, would you please put time cat in the Flash's red outfit with lightning trails? And it made this little cat for me. I mean, amazing fun. But
Yes.
that's the depth and the breadth of what I'm going to rely on artificial intelligence for. I've watched it at work be fantastic in summarizing hour-long meetings. That's something that you can watch the what's called VTT, voice to text, happening in real time in a Teams meeting. If you turn on narration, turn on transcript, you will see your words come out real time, and then the computer is just summarizing that. So that, I think, is a safe and simple way. You still have to check that it didn't miss anything. You have to take paper notes. They always say, yeah, people need to keep teaching the AI. And I'm like, well, that just means correcting when it overlooks something or drops something that it shouldn't. So yeah, as a confidence in it, in helping with academics, policy, any sort of higher thought, I'm not going to look to it, but I'll make a lot of time cats with it.
Yeah, I made a few pictures myself when it first came out, and it is fun, but it's a waste of time to me.
Well, but finding its usefulness and then, using it for that and then rejecting the rest and recognizing its limitations. That's what's so important about technology. We're still smarter than technology because we can do those things if we choose to, but we're often encouraged not to.
Well, I'd love to land on a point of hope. And Marcia, I'm going to ask you, has there been anything in the last couple of weeks that you've seen or experienced, from your life or from the outer world, that you'd like to raise
Wow.
on a positive note?
Yeah.
a step
No.
forward, even if it's the resolution of something bad. That's hope.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, you know, eh, I don't have anything specific. I keep
Okay.
getting these reminders from various places
Hmm.
that that the world is that my life, not the world, that my life is as I choose it to be. Let's
Hmm.
put it that way. And every once in a while, you know, because here I am, I'm retired, I'm, you know, not always doing the things that I thought I would be doing when I retired, but every so often I get a reminder that today is a good day to change that in a positive way.
Good.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like that. I thought you were going to quote Worf. I was worried there for a second.
What did
That
Worf
phrase, "Today is a good day to die." That's a Worf
do?
quote from Star Trek. So I was like, "Oh no, here we go."
Not
Yeah.
Klingon.
No, but yes, yes, self-determination
Yeah.
and fighting the feeling that all of this messaging, and particularly, after what we learned in the last 5 years about feeling like the big system has got you cornered, and what are you going to do? How are you gonna not do what they say? I think that's a great place to land, and that is that defiance can simply be choice, and
Mm.
individuality and independence doesn't have to be at the cost of someone else. It doesn't have to be an affront to what we feel their values are, what they signal their values are. I'm talking about these divides in general opinion about vaccines, technologies, things like that. But yeah, we we get at the end of the day, we get to decide how this sets with us, how we feel about it, what it means, and how we're going to, what we're going to do about it in our lives. So I like that lesson. Free
Mhm.
choice cannot be outsourced,
Right.
and
Oh,
we have to remember that our determination um, should be, I think, results focused and positive focused. I see a lot of people getting up in arms, because I'm a centrist. I'm independent. So I have a lot of folks on the left and the right, and I've seen a whole lot of stress and anxiety
oh my gosh,
in
so much
Democrat
right now.
friends.
Oh, man,
Yeah, yeah.
that's why I have to avoid. That's one of the great things that I've learned lately is stress puts you into fear or flight mode, and that's very bad for your health long term.
Right.
It's
Right.
very easy to get tempted into getting in a cat fight with someone, and you
Yeah.
want to weigh in, and you're like, well, I've got some information for you, and you just think this is going to do it. That's a whole social media behavior that we have watched for all these years. But I like that you can make the choice. And I'm thinking of times I put that into play in the last week, Marcia, and that's
Mm.
seeing comments and things that are just vicious and acerbic, and wanting to get in and somehow scrap about it, and making the choice not to influence anybody with that, not to encourage that. It's like, I'm in my mid 50s. I should put away my childhood toys at some point and really exercise well. Oh, okay. um, Put them in a box. Put them in a box. Not give them away, but store most of them away. As far as being reactionary, being inconsiderate of someone's opinion, even when it's a horrible opinion, in my opinion, that I want to. Uh, I want to have a more graceful experience with people, particularly since I'm this still people say, oh, you're anonymous, who are you, why should we trust you? And that's why I say again and again and again, you shouldn't trust me. I'm not here to have you join a church of Nick. I don't have a fan club. I don't have a Substack. I'm not monetizing. I'm not writing a book. And no disrespect to anyone who uses those tools to communicate. But I just have to reinforce for people, this is about keeping the good of humanity front and center, and putting politics in the back seat, if not in the trunk.
Mm. Yep.
Well, I thank you, Nick, for joining us. Marcia and I have really enjoyed this conversation.
good to talk to you, Nick.
I can see it on her face, and we haven't talked in too long. So I'm so glad you got back to McDuff Lives. I want to say hi to Paul and DeBoer and our good friend Jerome Brown, who are the McDuff Lives Dutch contingent. And it's so great to have folks around the world to tune into McDuff Lives and share the chat on our Friday days.
And our regulars too, Corky and Brightmore Dinosaur.
Dr. John Scott Perez.
Yes, also known as
yes.
Can Detect.
Yes.
We know who you are. All right. And everybody else, have a great afternoon and a great weekend. And we will be back Monday at 11 a.m.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much again, Nick Petosky, Marcia Keith, and we will be back on Monday morning. Bye now.
Aloha.